to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Mark, the agenda's before us. Any additions?
No changes, Mayor.
Thank you. The minutes from the August 19th City Commission meeting are before you. Do we hear a motion for approval?
So moved. Second.
There's a second. Is there questions, additions, anything from anyone? Hearing none. All those in favor of the minutes say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. No special orders, no study session. Public comments on related items on the agenda, please. Anyone? Please.
Let's go to the podium.
If you would,
all right?
they'll record it better.
Okay. It's been a while since I've been to a meeting.
You've been busy.
Yeah, yes, I am. My name is Wendy Nystrom. I live at 530 Winter Avenue. I would like to comment on the resolution to basically create a fire department substation in Big Rapids Charter Township. I'm sure it'll be approved because the city is always a good neighbor. First of all, I want the citizens of Big Rapids Charter Township, our neighbors, to be safe during any emergency. As many of you know, the Big Rapids Charter Township basically surrounds the city of Big Rapids, and it is important to work together, and the city assists with services the township may need and pays the city for these services. The current supervisor, who has been in office for only a few months, maybe a little more, stopped attending the monthly meetings with the city manager, is my understanding, but now asks the city to run their fire department. Why? So now they wanted to contract our fire department director, who already has a full-time job, to add and basically create a substation. It is not the responsibility of the city to clean up Big Rapids Township Fire Department. I hope you've all asked these questions. What liability does this create for the city? To me, this is the township supervisor and deputy supervisor's job to address the Big Rapids Fire Department issues. If Big Rapids Charter Township needs the city of Big Rapids to provide services for their citizens, then it may be time. Yes, I am going to say this publicly. It may be time that Big Rapids Charter Township begin negotiations to join the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments, public comments on unrelated things? Please, Rosemary.
I'm gonna stay back here.
Okay, yell loudly.
Are you done watering the flowers?
Todd said it's getting real close.
I think it's hit, but
Yeah. Some have been removed, Rosemary, and you're gonna see them going away over the next week or so.
I just wanna say thank you for the beautiful flowers downtown. It means a lot to me, and I know there's a lot of people that enjoy those flowers. And there's a couple of them over on the bridge that the wind didn't take the one. Somebody took that one because that one was gone before the wind came. But thank you for putting them on the bridge. That was, wonderful. And I know you had a rough time over on the one bridge, but thanks a lot.
Thank you. I think the commission would all like to thank the flower attendants. Man, they are diligent all summer.
I got to,
Mostly 3 people, Todd and his 2 helpers, right? Man, they're diligent. Saturday, Sunday, whatever day it is, they're working, so.
I personally stopped and talked to 2 of them and thanked them.
So Heather, do we have a new vendor, or are you just working on it? Our company has retired,
Oh, no.
and they've been outstanding, and Heather's working on it, or
Yeah, we're meeting with the owner this week.
a new owner?
Yeah.
Good,
It should
good
be
luck.
a good transition, we think, so, from one to the other.
You'll
But it's
find out
been-
if it's not, because Rosemary will tell you. Right, Rosemary? You'll let us know. Thank you. Anybody else? Hearing no further comment, we'll go right into general business. There are no public hearings. We'll start with the resolution awarding a bid for a new utility terrain vehicle for the police department. And I think the vice chief's gonna take over that one.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Here tonight to ask that the City Commission approve the bid to purchase a 2025 Polaris UTV. We have several great areas in our town. Our trails, Clay Cliffs, Riverwalk, as well as the White Pine Trail, and several properties that surround those are almost impossible to get to by a traditional patrol vehicle or emergency vehicle. Having the UTV will allow us to patrol those more frequently, will allow us to have more citizen encounters on the trails, to keep an eye on the trails, to see what's going on out there, as well as to respond to any unfortunate emergency that may arise on the trails. A lot easier than if we were to try to get a full-size SUV or a rescue rig down the trails. Further, we have several parades and festivals throughout town where streets are closed off. A UTV would be extremely helpful to be able to help patrol during those areas, or in those areas when they're full of people, closed off to general traffic. We put out a process to bid on this vehicle to 3 local businesses. One was Fox, Peacock Sports, I believe, out of Baldwin, Central Motorsports out of Owasso, and Lakeside Motorsports out of Mecosta. Lakeside Motorsports came back with by far the lowest bid at $30,159.39. I would like to request that they be awarded the bid for this UTV. The funds which can be located in the motor pool, general account ledger listed in the position paper.
Thank you. Questions from the commissioner?
Does this need a fit-out kit?
There'll
Or
be some,
whatever it is that you guys called, I know we had one.
It's not nowhere near what would go into like an actual police vehicle. Lakeside is going to upgrade for us, or going to install blinkers, turn signals, a horn.
Yep.
And then we'll also eventually get it outfitted with decals and a siren.
Okay.
So to start, we would only need basically the decals,
Okay.
and then we can kind of outfit from there.
I just wasn't sure if there's a bunch of technology on it.
No, it's very plain compared to a traditional police car.
All right.
Other questions?
Scott, question that I have, you're mentioning that it could be used for like an emergency situation. Will it be able to like say put a backboard on if need be to haul somebody out if need be, or?
I don't know that this one would be set up to do that. That would be something I guess we would have to work with the fire department with.
I was just wondering,
But
cause
we'd definitely be able to get to the location where someone might
Okay.
be a lot easier than by foot.
If you're, the complaint I hear the most is parents are feeling, that their children are smelling an awful lot of dope on both the Big Rapids side of the trail and the White Pine Trail. And you'll be patrolling that with this. Is there a patrol schedule, or are you gonna do it randomly? And what do you do if you come up to somebody and they're smoking dope, and what will you do? Will you have your vehicle there? You'll be right on top of them. So those 2 questions are the ones I had.
I don't know. I mean, we'll definitely have to sit down and come up with a patrol schedule. But yeah, it would be just like any other patrol vehicle. We would be there. The beauty of it, like you said, was we'd be able to get right up to them instead of walking or coming down the trail in a big patrol car. We would still take all of our equipment that we would need to enforce the laws, ticket books, all the emergency equipment that we normally carry with that. But yeah, we would be able to deal with that situation right there. And if necessary, transport someone out to a patrol car if we had to.
And what do you tell the parent who's complaining of the marijuana smell along the trail?
But I just think that I would tell them that this is going to be a tool that will allow us to get out there and address that a lot easier, a lot more frequently than if we were to walk on foot or to take a full-size patrol car. Because we'll be able to get into areas where a lot of times those folks aren't sitting right on the trail. They're off down in, ditches and ravines and stuff like that, where we can't get to real easily. But with this tool would be something that we could use to get to those areas and make our presence known a little bit more than just driving down the trail.
Thank you. questions from anyone in the group who might have questions for the police department? Yes, Paul.
Can I stand here since he has that position?
Speak loudly so
And he has a gun too, so. My name is Paul Griffith, and I'm Vice Chair of the Friends of the White Pine, which is a nonprofit 501c3, work a lot on the trail. And I want to compliment the city for the action you're about ready to take. I think it's very, very important on several levels, not only the White Pine, but as mentioned, Riverwalk and Clay Cliffs and parades and things of that nature. They actually started construction up again today on the White Pine. And so when that thing gets done, it will become the longest single paved trail in the state and the third longest paved trail in the country. And so there will be a lot of activity. We've already seen a lot of increase in activity, which is good. There'll be a significant increase in fundraising events on the trail. There's about 40 now a year, and I can see that growing to 80 to 100 a year, up and down the trail. And so you're gonna have groups. In fact, the White Pine Ride is the Big Dam Ride is next weekend, and the weekend after that is the White Pine Ride, kind of thing. So I wanna compliment you and thank you for the action you're ready to take. I'd add one thing, and that is to consider putting a speed limit on the trail. And the reason for that is the emergence of e-bikes. Class 1 and 2 are geared to go up to 20 miles an hour. Class 3, which are not allowed, go 28 miles an hour. And particularly in city limits, I don't think you want bikes going 28 miles an hour with kids walking and mothers and parents with baby strollers. So actually in Traverse City, in the really heavy area, they actually have a speed limit of 10, kind of thing. So I would ask the city to consider that, not on Riverwalk, but on the White Pine Trail. We got racers that are coming through at 25 and 28 miles an hour. Just slow down when you're in the city limits. So anyway, for consideration, but thanks again for making this investment.
Thank you, Paul. What's the rule on speed limits on the trail, Mark? I have no clue.
Well, these are the guys I would ask.
Being it's a state trail, I'd probably have to coordinate with them, find out what their specifics are. But yeah, it's definitely a good idea, something to look into and see what answers we can come up with for you.
Other questions? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the purchase of a utility terrain vehicle for the police department?
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Further questions? Hearing none, roll call please.
James,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Rhodes,
Yes.
Simmons,
Yes.
Gunther.
Yes. When will that come, Scott?
I believe it is in stock, the one similar to what we're looking for, the same exact one. It would be a matter of Lakeside putting on the turn signals, then delivery to us, and I think the garage said about a week out for decals and stuff, so.
Soon.
It would be fairly quick, I would imagine within the next couple weeks if
Good.
we'd be able to get it out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Detective, you want to say something?
I just assisted with the project in case he had any.
He's the technical guy, so if anybody has any questions specifically about the machine, Dave would be here to answer those.
Does the mayor get to ride in it?
Yeah.
In the parades?
Was that his new Santa mobile?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Next is a resolution approving the amendment to the listing agreement for the Hanchett property. That was requested by Joe because of the change in the laws on commissions, right, Mark?
Correct. As I understand, there was, a class action suit nationally about buyers and agents and fees and sellers agent fees, and I won't pretend to understand or know all of those. As I read this, it's our current listing agreement for the Hanchett site or 906 North State. It would simply add that the MLS does not require cooperation with sub-agent of the seller, buyer's agent, or transaction coordinator. So it seems simple. He ensures to me that this puts us in line with the new requirements for these agreements.
Brad, does that mean we negotiate, anytime there's an offer, we can negotiate that,
You have the ability to negotiate
the rate?
commissions. Yes. You-
And is that happening statewide?
I don't know, I'm not in.
Don't do that
Don't do
thing.
that a lot, but yeah, I know that the law has changed, and so these agreements are changing.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the amendment to the leasing agreement?
So
Listing
moved.
agreement. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion, second. Further questions? Anybody in the audience have an insight into it? Hearing none.
Oh,
Nope.
sorry,
You
can I
wanna
have,
say something?
yeah,
Yeah,
I
please.
just have one question. So hypothetically with this, being this ordinance or this amendment would, make us compliant with the law. But would this hypothetically mean if we had an offer on a property like say Hanchant, we would be in negotiations with our realtor, and if we could not come to terms with our realtor, we could miss out on a sale? Is that a hypothetical we could find ourselves in?
Yeah, I wouldn't, I think that's possible, yeah. If they needed some outrageous fee, I imagine the commission wouldn't be on board with that.
Wouldn't that fee be negotiated prior to the listing or upon the listing?
Well, we've already listed this one, so I think.
I understand
Yeah.
that,
This-
but I mean, generally,
Yeah.
would that not be the way that it would work?
Yeah, usually you negotiate that ahead of time.
Okay, so we would renegotiate, I guess. I guess the way I read this is that we can't have an agreed upon commission. So when would the negotiation happen? It happens before we list, after we list, before we receive an offer, or after we receive the offer? That's my question.
And I'll get to the bottom of it. If I answered right now, I wouldn't be
Okay.
100% sure. Well, I'll get to the bottom of that and I'll report back. Okay. I just
Thanks.
don't know enough.
Thank you, Amanda.
Yep,
It's a good question.
Do we have the motion? Did we get a motion?
yep,
Johnson?
yes.
Rhodes?
Yes.
Seven?
Yes.
Gunther?
Yes.
James?
Yes.
Next, a very controversial issue, resolution of the city manager's new employment agreement for the next 5 years. And, do we hear some conversation on that, commission? Public? Hearing none, is there a motion to authorize the city manager's employment agreement to run through 2030?
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Further discussion?
Rhodes?
Please?
Yes.
Seven?
Yes.
Gunther?
Yes.
James?
Yes.
Johnson?
Yes.
Next, under Public Works Division, it's a resolution, expanding the easement for the Hills Development LLC, Sue Glatz's development, Hills of Mitchell Creek. The pump station that is there was undersized and underpowered, and the people at the top of the hill are having water pressure problems. And because we own the water system, we didn't put it in, but we have to fix it. It's expensive, so we have to put in a bigger pump station to pump more water up the hill, so we need a bigger hunk of land to put a bigger building. It's not my favorite issue. Whoever designed that pump station should be paying for this, not the city, but they're bankrupt and gone, and
You nailed it, Mayor, in your description, and we are opening bids soon on this project, and so, yeah, the costs are gonna be high, but we feel it's important to service those folks who are already connected to our system. But we'll be bringing you the bids soon, but we would not be able to do that if we don't have access or control of the property we propose to build on.
and Sue Glatz has been very
Oh, yeah, they want,
obliging, they want us to
Yeah.
put the new water pumps in.
yes.
They're selling more and more lots up there, and it's
Very much so.
filling up. Questions, commissioners? Public? Is there,
So that you're doing this to accept a conveyance, so it's usually not necessary that you would accept, because you're being conveyed the easement, the city's getting the benefit of it, but, we're doing this so that in the future, if there are things that you maybe don't want to accept as a city, you have that freedom, so that's why we make it a practice that you would accept a conveyance, even though you're not necessarily.
has Sue signed the conveyance over to us?
She's in the process of doing that, it hasn't been received yet, but she has it, and she's got the instructions to notarize it and return it.
And has indicated she was going
And
to.
she has indicated she's going to. Yep.
Thank you. is there a motion for the resolution accepting the conveyance of easement for Hills Development, Hills of Mitchell Creek?
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion, second. Any further comment? Tammy?
Stillman?
Yes.
Gunther?
Yes.
James?
Yes.
Johnson?
Yes.
Rhodes?
Yes.
Next is a resolution, well, it's a long resolution, but it's to allow us to take the rest of the money from one of the grants and use it, and getting permission to use it from the state. Mark, explain that one.
Yes, there's some extra funding that is being, we are receiving permission from the state to be able to spend it on some facility renovations. It's targeted towards window replacement right now. There's some water service issue they want to work on too. But it'll depend on how much things cost. But it's, $3,000 or $3,300, I think. And we're mainly looking at replacing windows, so make the building more energy efficient too.
What was the first grant for the remodel of the whole building?
Right, it was, and the hoist was a part
Oh,
of
the
that
hoist,
too.
the
Yeah,
hoist.
yeah. So,
And we got the bids under what they agreed to.
right, fund.
That's an interesting one. Questions, commissioners? Is there a motion for the resolution accepting the revised capital formula grant for Dial-A-Ride?
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Questions, anyone? Hearing none, Tammy?
James?
Yes.
Johnson?
Yes.
Rhodes?
Yes.
Stillman?
Yes.
Gunther?
Yes. Next is the contract, the fire contract. I'll give a little history. When I first was elected, when Bill Stanley came to the sewer user meeting, I said, well, let's merge the fire department. And he said, yeah, we'll take you over anytime you'd like. I said, well, that isn't what I meant. Subsequently, they've had a lot of issues in the fire department. Mainly, they're having trouble getting volunteers to run a fire department, for whatever reason that may be. And I don't know those reasons, but I think I have an idea. So then, what was happening was almost, well, what percent of the time, Steve, does the first call out to the township not get answered?
I don't have that number readily available, but it does happen sometimes. Where first due, they're unavailable, so then we're responding.
And we're first respond. And it takes a little longer because they are called first. That's becoming more common. And that's when Carmen Bean came to us when he was first selected as supervisor and said, we'd be interested in looking at a merger or whatever you might want to call it with the city. And so Mark studied it, and Steve, of course, is the fire chief and studies it like crazy. And came back to Mark and said, if the commission would like to do that, it would probably be best for the safety of the residents of Big Rapids Township. I suppose that what interested me most is we had a fire out in the industrial park, and the whole fire department was over there putting out a big fire. And we got a EMS call from a Big Rapids resident. So we had to call into Big Rapids Township to get them to come in and cover that while our guys were fighting a fire. And it took a long time and it wasn't well received, would you say, Steve? Is that?
Yeah, there was, I'm trying to recall if it was a medical, but it was a.
Or a fire in the Sparrows building
on
Pracken. And so that kind of pushed the negotiations a little bit by the city then and said, well, we'd like to be first response on all the calls because we get there, we have full-time people. And then Carmen, being supervisor of the township, had to talk to all his board, as many people as he could, apparently he did. We didn't have any part of it. But then came back to us and said, we'd like to do a temporary 60-day, we suggested a 60-day agreement while we finalize a full merger agreement. Whether that means that station down there is gonna be used is gonna be up to the fire chief and the city commission. And they, with Carmen's thought, he said, I'll take that to my commission, you take it to your commission, and we have a 60-day agreement in the packet Pretty straightforward agreement. Any comments from Brad on that one?
No, I think it's.
You wrote it all, I
I
think.
did draft it, yeah, and in consultation with Steve and Mark and others, and I think it covers the 60-day temporary. I mean, it does provide, that at any time, if it's not working out, either party can terminate the agreement, so. It's not a permanent thing, it's a temporary thing while for future discussions can take place.
So, we would have 60 days to write a permanent agreement,
Yeah, or extend
or
this.
extend this one.
Right.
To me, the issue is safety of humans, whether it be in the city or in the township. I think from everything Steve taught me, it'll be safer though for those humans. Is that right, Steve?
Correct.
And I should say, it's not necessarily there's lots of different legal avenues for how the township and city can work together, whether it's creating a fire district, whether it's a straight up merger, whether there's different mechanisms, so that's part of what needs to be explored and discussed.
Steve, do you have anything to add?
Just that, you know, when they approached us, we got looking at it. There's gonna be numerous steps in negotiating a potential merger, from personnel to assets to all of those things. And so that is a lengthier discussion. And when they were in need of a fire chief, that's speaking to the temporariness of this agreement, is the continual collaboration efforts, if you will, to try to find the best response model for all of our citizens, honestly, and what that looks like.
Thank you. Commissioners, you must have questions for Steve, probably the most.
I have a couple. So are you confident in our ability to come to an agreement after 60 days, or is it likely that this is gonna end up getting extended?
I'm optimistic that we can start these discussions right away and have some of these discussions. But, it'll depend on all the parties involved in discussing it as well.
Okay. And then I don't know, maybe this next one would be for Brad. If this contract gets extended, would it be an additional $4,000 for each 1 month extension? Or would that be renegotiated?
We have to renegotiate it. This is only for $8,000 for the 60 days.
Okay.
So if we did it beyond the 60 days, you have to renegotiate a new price for that time period.
Okay.
David, anything?
No, not, well, going back, my son and I are very much into listening to the fire calls, and I can speak to the fact that I have heard many a call for the township, and it does seem to take, I've timed it sometimes 10, 15 minutes before anybody answers, unfortunately. And, working at Meyer and sometimes having that wait, for somebody, if somebody gets injured, it's, when I toured with Steve, we were talking about it'd be nice if the city could just respond, because they'd be there quicker and wouldn't have to wait, and so it's a tough decision either way.
Commissioners?
I would just like to know, did we get to an answer to my question this morning?
There's no issue.
There is no policy in effect.
There's a policy in place that applies to employment sharing, but in this situation, it wouldn't apply because Steve is gonna be keeping his job with the city, just getting added duties onto his job. It's not like he's taking a second role on.
We probably ought to clarify for everybody's
Yeah, go
benefit. Commissioner James had posed the question about a policy or something that we used to do anyway, in which members of the city staff, namely fire department members, couldn't go and work for other departments. And questioned whether or not that policy still existed or not, and we dug into it, we found an old one. Doesn't look like we're actually following that policy perfectly, probably need to change it. But this is different than that, but we did get to the bottom of what you found.
They found it,
Okay.
and it was there.
That policy addresses secondary employment. Again, Steve's not leaving, he's not taking on a second job, he's adding added roles to his current job as a city fire chief, so that's why we don't think it implicates this particular policy.
And you have no liability questions.
No, liability is addressed in the agreement.
We do.
Please.
So unfortunately, the people who I have questions for are not here, because I would not expect city staff to answer my question about why this is happening so quickly. We heard about it at least 6 months ago. I found out about it on Thursday, I think, and that was something that came up very quickly. And I feel like the city is being put into a situation where hurry up, do this, or it's an emergency. And it just feels like we're in a situation that has been created by the Big Rapids Township, whether that's the supervisor, whether that's their board. And it's something that we've been talking about for so many months. Why is this a hurry up to do it right now? Why are we being put in that position? Why am I not able to ask them questions? Why are they not here? And to vote no at this point means I would put some of our residents potentially in jeopardy. So none of it feels good to be put in this position.
I think, is it public information why it became an emergency, Mark? That their fire chief retired.
He did.
And they have no leader now.
And he
As
Retired
of September 1st.
rather suddenly.
Yes, I think probably it
So-
was quite interesting.
So where is their own contingency plan? And why are we their contingency plan with less than 2
Exactly.
days before a meeting? So again, we will be good partners, but I do not appreciate being put into this position as an elected official to not be able to get answers to my questions. And I'm not putting city staff in a position where I'm gonna ask them questions that they cannot answer.
The reason I let a similar opinion go is the safety of the citizens of Big Rapids Township and Big Rapids. If they're, you could answer that, if they're chiefless and they don't have anybody appointed, and they only have how many volunteers?
I haven't heard an exact roster number, but I believe it to be 9 to 11.
Yeah. They're way short and they don't have a chief, isn't
Why
that
don't they
why?
have a deputy chief?
Pardon me?
Why don't they have a deputy chief?
He also retired.
Oh, he did?
I read the minutes, the last 2 meetings, so there's also some other issues going on there.
So Mayor, that is,
I got you.
yep, those are my questions without being
But
able to
as you
ask
said, it's
questions.
hard to vote no when the safety of citizens are involved. That's the toughie.
Exactly.
Yeah. How do you feel about that, Mark? Do you think?
About Commissioner Simmons.
I specifically didn't want to ask these questions of city staff.
Right, but
So I
Mark-
was not
Mark
going to-
is the boss, gets paid big bucks, so he can answer that question.
Bigger bucks after his contract.
No,
Yeah.
Yeah.
thank you all for that, by the way. I think it's a fair point. It's a fair point, but this is for 60 days, right? This isn't, we're not signing on to a 5-year contract. This is a 60-day operation, and it's to help our neighbors. And in my opinion, I'm not, certainly that mine doesn't matter a whole lot. It seems like that's something we should do. They would only entertain this because of the talents of Steve Schroeder.
Yeah.
So I think we should all feel pretty good about that, and the talents of our department. I'm not trying to leave those out, but there's a trust and a belief that Steve is the best one that can maybe pull him a little bit out of a snarly kind of situation, and we scrambled to try and help as neighbors. But it's a fair point.
As the mayor, I'd be lying if I didn't say, from my first day in office, I thought that merger should happen. So I was prejudiced all along. I think it's a good thing when they surround us like Wendy said, they surround us completely.
Right.
So wouldn't it just make sense not to have volunteers south of town screaming through town with lights and sirens going to go north of town? That used to just make me crazy because it's so dangerous. We should all be one big team.
Out of the city.
All right, is there a motion to approve the fire administrative contract with Big Rapids Charter Township?
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Further questions from anyone in the room? Yes, please.
I shouldn't say anything,
Well, go ahead,
But-
loudly.
but I remember our situation in the park. That's been probably 2 years ago. And it has no bearing probably on this, but I gotta get it out or I'll forgive myself. At that time, we had the two units, city and the township, working together in a wonderful atmosphere over there. And so help me, you don't see mobile homes standing after a fire. We saw a mobile home standing. And if you looked at the back of that mobile home, just the back of it, you wouldn't know it had been on fire. So I just have to get that out and say, that's probably 2 years, a good 2 years ago. At that time, there were two departments there that come together and a wonderful job.
Would it be just that wonderful if we merge, Steve?
It would work for that, yes. That's the
That's
level
the
of
key, I
service,
think.
that's the level of service we strive for.
Others? Anyone else? Last shot? Tammy?
Johnson?
Yes.
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 Gunther?
Yes.
James?
Yes.
Motion carries. I don't know what's happening at Big Rapids Township right now.
They're in a meeting. They have their
Same thing.
meeting tonight
They have the same resolution.
at 7. Their meeting started at 7.
7. Oh, darn it. All right. Anybody have unscheduled business before we start the work session? Y'all? No? If we'll take a 5 or 10-minute break to get the room around for our work session, it'll be on the Big Rapids Housing Commission memo written by Brad Fowler, City Attorney. ready over there?
Zoom going.
You ready? We're back in order. The last housing discussion we had around this table ended up quite exciting. And we thought we'd better do better today. So here we are again.
I like that idea.
My question and some of the other commissioners was, what is our obligation to the Housing Commission? And so Brad looked through all the state stuff and the city stuff and came up with the handout that you saw. And we thought we'd let him tell us how he did it and what he did and why he did it. Go ahead, Brad.
Well, if you wanted to do it better, you should have enlisted me. No, I'm just kidding. So yeah, we were asked to look at kind of the background and the history of how does the Housing Commission work with the city, statutorily, historically, legally. And so I did the kind of legal piece of that and how the Housing Commission is structured, where its powers come from, what its powers are, and what the City Commission's role is in the oversight of that. And Michelle took the historical piece and kind of looked at that in terms of history of the Housing Commission with the city. So that's kind of where the memo that you all have that's part of the agenda packet came from. I won't spend a lot of time going over the powers and duties of the Housing Commission. If you're on the Housing Commission, you know them. If you're on the City Commission, it's all spelled out in the statute. But what I think the part that we kind of need to discuss and get feedback on from the city's perspective, I think, is what oversight and supervision do you all want based on what's legally required and what's legally permissible for moving forward with the Housing Commission. And so kind of the first part of that is how the housing commissioners are appointed. And right now, they're appointed under the statute, under the act, to 5-year terms by the chief administrative officer of the city, which in this case is Mark. However, the statute does provide that if the chief administrative officer is not elected, which is the case, Mark's appointed, then the city commission can, by resolution, adopt a resolution to appoint somebody else, an elected official, to be the appointing authority for the housing commission. And that could be any one of the commissioners, could be the mayor. You could structure it to be the mayor or one of the commissioners with the whole commission approval, that sort of thing, so that there's accountability to the voters is the idea behind that provision. So that's the kind of first thing we looked at. In terms of how housing commissions are funded, they can be funded through loans or grants by the city commission. I think historically that's, I don't know how prevalent that has been. I think most of the funding probably comes from grants.
Our understanding is the Housing Commission was formed by the city, so the city could access HUD funding to build all the buildings, buy all the properties, all that stuff. And yeah, nothing for the Housing Commission in your budget, right, Carla?
Yeah, so I mean, if the city were to ever loan or grant money, you know, you can put conditions on that funding. You also have, as the city commission, authority to get reporting that you require to understand. I mean, the housing commission should be reporting on the grants that they're applying for and receiving as part of their annual report, which they're required to do under the act. And my understanding is that they've done that, or I've seen one annual report.
For over 20 years.
And so that's one of the reporting requirements. If you want more information than what's in there, that's something the city commission can direct, again, by resolution. So you can pass a resolution requiring whatever information you want reported that you think is helpful for your oversight role. If you want to get more information on the specific grants, you can do that. If you want to have it so that all grants be approved by the city commission before they're applied for or solicited, you can also do that. So that's another option that the statute expressly provides for. In terms of the officers and employees of the commission, the city commission has the ability, if you want to ask for a report, do that compensation level, and then you can actually condition or set compensation levels either within ranges or specific amounts. If that's something you're interested in doing, that's another power you're granted under Act 18. So that. Right now, my understanding is that you do the annual report. I don't know that every grant that is solicited or applied for goes before the commission. Is that accurate?
Every grant that we apply for typically requires a letter of support from the city, and so we do always get that from the city.
Does
I
that
don't know
come,
that it comes, I mean, I
Probably doesn't.
pretty much ask Mark for it and he gives it to us, I mean.
Needs to go to the commission to follow the law though, right?
they're supposed to report any action that they're taking with regard to grants solicited. If you want to have approval authority, you have to ask for it by resolution. So it's not necessarily a legal requirement that you approve it unless you ask for it, but then it does become illegal.
And would say all of our grants are in our annual report, I believe. So, but we certainly can do that. It's no big deal.
There must be a reason they wrote that. I can't figure it out, what's the reason?
I think the reason is that the elected body is you.
Elected body.
Right, and so you're the ones accountable to the voters and the people, and the housing commission is operating, kind of as a subset of the city in that way. That's where that comes from, I think. Yeah, if there's other questions, I mean, I think that in terms of discussion moving forward, it's what does the city, I think I and the city staff probably want guidance on what does the city commission want in terms of appointment authority. Do you want us to draft a resolution adjusting that from its current setup where Mark appoints? And then do you want any kind of further reporting on what that might be so that we can craft a resolution to that effect? And then whether or not you want to look at having approval authority for all grants and things.
When I first became the mayor, Mark and I and Mark Sahaki had a meeting, and I said, well, who appoints their board? And Mark said, Mark did. That really isn't the democratic way. The democratic way is have the elected officials appoint boards, and we do that with all our boards. So I'm of the opinion that the city commission should approve the board members brought to us by Linda, and that's just the democratic way. I'm not saying I don't like who Mark appoints, but he's not an elected official. He doesn't report to the citizens.
And
We
no
do.
other board functions
Correct.
this way, so it would make
Not
sense.
that I know of.
I think we asked that question if there
I
was.
don't think there's
something
any, I
else.
mean, all the city boards, I think, are appointed by the mayor. I know that we frequently have them on the agenda, so I know.
The commissioners all vote on those.
Commissioners voted.
And that's the way I'm looking at the way it should be. One of us could be the liaison that Linda brings the names to, and then so I'm just one vote of 5. I would like to see that happen. I asked Mark if he cared, and he didn't care. So that's just my opinion. There's
My
4
opinion
others.
would be very similar to that. So we treat it the way we treat all of the other boards. The mayor would make the approval with the commissions. It just makes sense to me.
I'm not opposed to it. Linda, what's your thoughts?
I didn't think, I've been asked about it by the mayor before and I said 6 of one, half dozen of
Yeah, you
another.
didn't have a
Did I
big-
say that? No, it doesn't. I mean, are we the only board that doesn't get funding from the city? That would be the only difference, but it still doesn't matter to me. And I don't know if that's true or not. Are we the only board that doesn't get any funding
Well,
from the city?
DDA has funding, DBA has money. Where's the DBA money come from?
From the DDA.
From the DDA, so you probably are.
Yeah. So, but it doesn't matter to us at all.
My statement on all of this is that I could see how that would clarify and streamline things for the future. I would like to make sure that anybody who's sitting on the board keeps their seat until it's their term limit, and that it wouldn't retroactively impact them. I don't want to reset the entire board of such a fundamental part of our community. But I was also wondering, and I had brought this up earlier today to Mark, how candidates get selected or put themselves forward to be on the Housing Commission. There seems to be a process, like a form that gets filled out for most of the boards and committees. There's a process if you're appointed as a city commissioner. We have had such a dedicated team of people on our Housing Commission for so many years. I'm just wondering, did they approach the city wanting to be a part of that? Did we have city staff members reach out and say, hey, would you be interested in that? Kind of what's the history on that, if you know it?
I think over the years it's been a variety of things. I think people can fill out one of the interest indicators. to be on the board for the housing commission, same as any other board.
I don't think we've had a lot of that.
But I don't think we've had a lot of that. I think,
Like pulling teeth to get people on a board.
well,
It's usually like,
Yeah.
hey, would you be interested
Yeah.
in serving on this board? And if you would, it would be really great if you would go to the city and fill out that form.
Our plan would just be as the terms expire,
they.
make sure Linda still wants that
expire
person.
once a year, you know, it's like they're staggered, and then we are required to have one housing commission resident of like Parkview and Evergreen, it can't be of like Nisbet or Meadow Park on the board per the Public Act. So, which we do have, so.
And the person who appoints, if you say you make it the mayor, that person doesn't unilaterally have the power to remove people. It would be on their recommendation, the city commission could vote to remove somebody. But it's not like
Tammy-
that power is not strictly.
Tim, would they have to come through, would Linda have to go through you to get it on the appointment schedule? Just, and then you call me and say so-and-so's,
Would you like every other board?
I think that's, anybody opposed? Anyone? We don't need a vote.
Just direction, because I can prepare a resolution for next meeting. So
Okay.
Are you looking at wanting the mayor to be the appointing official? Is there somebody, I mean, just,
I don't even, yes,
I
whatever,
think it
I
should
don't
be
care who it
there
is.
because our positions change.
Yep.
So it's easier just to say the mayor.
and then with commission approval?
With
Yes,
commission approval,
yes, yes, for sure.
Right, I can draft that resolution. And then the other questions are, if there's any other reporting you're looking for, and I don't know if it's helpful to maybe look at that 2023 annual report, is that sufficient information as to what the city would like, or is there more information?
Well, it depends, I guess, on what your background is, and I forgot mine, it's up in my bag, but I have the annual audit. I assume the next one isn't out yet, right?
Right,
Okay.
well, our auditors were on site and
How did you choose people from Saginaw?
housing commissions are very, very specialized. There are not very many
That do it?
auditors that do it. Yeah, there's only a handful in Michigan. Before we had the one in Saginaw, we had one that was in Kansas, believe it or not.
Wow.
And our auditor is actually starting to limit housing commissions that they do. They also do townships, ours does, and a couple other things, but because they can't keep up. It's a two-man veteran team, and we have a contract with them, I think, through next year. So,
I just happened to see that, I was kinda curious. Okay, for all of you who haven't looked at this is a nice recap, okay? The audit that's in my bag that I forgot to grab up there is like the city's audit, only smaller, which puts everything into detail for you. So like the recap that they have in here that shows on the balance sheet and the, wherever it's at, there's a financial, like, this is a nice financial thing.
it's right from the audit.
And it's right from the audit, I found it in the audit, you are absolutely correct. And the audit breaks some of this down, so like, they have a good cash position of 600,000, they have a fund balance of 800, or investments of 800,000, and then it goes on and lists some other things. If the rest of the commission is more interested in understanding a little bit more of this, my suggestion to you would be, like I've suggested to Carla many times on different projects, is do a layman's summary. Which, for example, would be our cash position is this, our investments are this, our fund balance is this. These are the projects we did this year and completed. You know, something just really kind of simple.
In the audit is a management's discussion and analysis,
Yep.
MD&A, it's right in the audit. So
Yep.
you're talking a little more simple than that.
Oh,
Because it
yes,
does say the
yes,
project, okay.
yes.
And I will also, not to jump from you to Fred, because I know he has something he wants to say. I heard you didn't like our annual report, and Mark Zahaki was very offended by that.
This, you don't like this?
It's too expensive, Jeez, look at the.
Oh, the
look at
paper.
Paper. They get so much money, they don't know whether they have good paper.
We were wondering you didn't like about it. and
Oh,
it-
you think, yeah.
It's like, you know.
I like it. I think it's classy.
I thought
You
it
know
was
what?
great.
I
and
like it.
Ferris Copy Center does a great job at a
Ferris
great
has all the
price.
money in the world
And
too.
we're not as big as the city, so we can do like 24 of them and have more than enough for everybody that we give them to.
Electricity fine, yeah, these places are
Yeah,
good.
there you go, there you go,
Anyway,
Karen.
people doing away with.
My question on the audit is, I would like to have the audit given to every city commissioner, especially, some city commissioners have special interest in money.
It was
Because
my
I
understanding,
personally
I thought
can't
that
read
we
an audit
were
worth
giving it to you.
I know Lorraine James can read an audit.
State
And she
website.
should have fair game at the audit.
Well, I thought that we were giving you the audit, and we did, there was some communication for last year, but I thought that Mark was giving it to you every other year. I don't know, I can't tell for sure if he was or not, but Tammy and I have a plan from now on, because we actually get paper copies bound, not as fancy as the annual report, but, with the combs on the side, and so we will make sure you get paper copies so that
We're proud of that audit, so yes, we'll be so happy to share with you.
How often do you have to do your audit?
Every year.
Every year. So is it real, so when you do your annual report, is it possible for you just to slide in the audit as well? Like, for those that wanna see the actual audit, like, you just sandwich them together and they come to us? And if we wanna if everyone has time that year for a joint meeting, that's kind of when we have.
So you want the audit on special paper too, Karen?
No.
Send it to me electronically, you don't even.
No, I'm just
to
We
attach.
typically don't complete the annual report until we get the audit. So yes, we would have them both bound separately, if that's okay, and give them to you at the same time.
Carla, did I diss you by saying Lorraine James, or do you wanna be the audit reviewer? I kinda, that
Anybody
was
who
kind of a
wants to
bad
review
deal I
our audit
gave
can
you.
review our audit.
I just.
You want me to add you to
Putting
the
them both together.
Yes.
is
If it
easy.
says I wanna be the audit reviewer, I would question their.
Spoken like a true accountant. Carla sits here and says, I can look at the audit anytime I want to. All I have to do is go to the state's website. So see,
Oh, I
she
do.
knows.
Yeah, me too.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to laugh so loud.
Anyway, Mark Zahaki used to bring them. I remember having them. When I had my 2-year break, I cleaned a bunch of things out of my office, and I had a bunch of your audits in there, so I know we used to get them.
Yes.
So you used to bring them and hand them out or whatever, and
And this past fall was my first time, so I made sure that I emailed it to Tammy. I will give her a hard copy. I'm not sure what happened the last couple of years. Mark said he thought he emailed them to somebody, but very well, he might have forgotten. He's getting old.
careful.
Sometimes he watches these, so I kind of said that for his benefit.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Linda, how
often.
is the bank, the river coming along with the Army Corps of Engineers? I've skipped the last few meetings because they're really,
They canceled the last
Oh,
one.
they did?
They did, actually. We should reach out to them.
is that all going well?
As slow as the Army Corps moves.
I
All
was
positive. No, we haven't heard something
Honestly, I
like-
was hoping they acted like they were gonna have cost estimates at this meeting, and then what's his face, the head guy, I can't think of his first name right now, that was here, he said he had to cancel, and could he do it, we do it the next Wednesday, and then somebody else said, well, we have this big conference, and then,
On in a week or two.
are we? I think so too, but I just wanna make sure. I think we're
Maybe the
moving.
biggest project in the city ever.
It's hard to understand what they're talking about, which, we've had conversations about that. They abbreviate everything. But yes, it appears they are moving.
Good, good. Other questions for the Housing Commission and Commissioners? There are two here.
The only other feedback that might be helpful is if the city commission wants a resolution requiring approval of all grant applications, solicitations, acceptances from the housing commission or not at this point. Right now, like I said, they're being reported to the city, but not necessarily subject to approval. You can make it subject to approval if you want.
I wouldn't want to impact the way you do business and have our meeting, one of our meetings that, is in 3 weeks and you need to submit the grant next week. And
It happened, it happens to us.
exactly.
I think if I was applying for a grant for, something off the wall crazy, Mark would not, he would not, you know what I mean? He would not do. And applying for the grant is, you don't know if you're gonna get it or not, right, Mark? So.
But I know a lot of the grants that we do need the resolution for us, and I didn't know the difference between what you guys needed for your grants versus, so the only thing I would say is that if you need a letter from the city, maybe that's what is the determination of when it comes to us for voting. Because if we think about it in the same terms of like, the way we talked about appointments and things like that, we wanna try to streamline it and treat everybody the same.
How do you handle your resolutions on your board? When you, how do you do your grants?
Our board passes a resolution, adopts a resolution for most grants that we apply for anymore, so.
How often do you need a letter of support from the city?
Every grant that we apply for because most of our grants are through the nonprofit, and so they wanted to know that we have local support. I mean, I guess I would hate to, apply for a grant with a local letter of support from Mark and then be awarded the grant and then not be able to sign the amendment because the city commission doesn't.
Well, that could happen, and that's exactly what I've been thinking as I
Yeah,
said.
and how many grants do you submit, do you go for a year? 50?
Oh, no. So I don't think that's a big deal. The only thing that I would wonder about clarifying is our grants for our for our public housing operating fund grant and our public housing capital fund program grant. We have to sign an amendment to the annual contributions contract accepting the money. You know, we don't really apply for our capital fund. It's just an allocation from HUD. It's dependent on Congress and appropriations, and they say, here, you get this much money for capital improvements. And then our subsidy.
So it's not a grant, right?
Well, they call it a capital fund program grant. And then our operating fund is based on how much rent we collected in the last year and how much we paid in utilities. Basically, they think, okay, this is how much shortfall we think you're gonna have between the rent you collect and how much you need to operate. And again, it's also dependent on Congress and appropriations because we might need X, but it might be funded at 90% or 95%. We need that money in order to exist. So that makes me a little nervous on the other end to say, if I couldn't accept it because you didn't approve it. I mean, we have to accept it in order to.
I think I'd be more comfortable with, being that the process seems to have always been you just approach Mark, and he writes the letter. So if we're making sure going forward that the board is appointed and approved by the commission, and Mark can inform us in unscheduled business, the housing commission approached me and I authorized this letter. I think that that would be the best way to make that kind of public, so it's not holding up your application process.
And I don't have a problem coming here anytime.
This isn't happening that often.
No, it's maybe,
Well,
it's like one
that's
grants
why
are there a couple times a year.
Yeah.
It's only a couple 50, I would just go crazy.
That's what I mean, because we have.
Give me a headache just thinking about it. It's only a couple.
Almost should do
And I don't mind coming before the board and
Just as like,
bringing it up, you know what I mean, at all. I don't have a problem with that at all. Unless, or if we could change it to say, city commission approval, for any grants applied for by like the nonprofit or the for-profit, any non-public housing grants would kind of make me feel,
Yeah, that's an
comfortable.
interesting thought right there.
you know what I mean?
I think
pretty
there's a way for us to figure this out.
Yeah.
I mean, you'd say a couple of years, I haven't written a letter in a long time.
For
I don't know.
well, for the
Missing
the
middle.
missing middle and the My Neighborhood, and
Yeah.
then I applied for the
I just
modular.
wrote that one and you signed it.
This is all making me nervous.
Two levels down.
Yeah.
Should have said that, Michelle.
I told them what it was.
It's clear. You told them what it was?
I said,
Honesty is the best.
I was thinking the missing middle one, but that's.
Missing middle, there was a modular, there was the My Neighborhood one.
Yeah.
75,000.
That wouldn't be that hard to
Probably like
have.
four. It
It
just,
wouldn't be that hard to have the city commission
No.
authorize that.
I would rather have them authorize it before I go through
I
all the
think that could be part of that.
Yeah, that's not a big deal.
That the city commission authorized the thing.
What do you think? Can make more work for you?
Oh, she's out of here, she doesn't.
Nonprofit.
You want,
Okay,
so
I'm-
two different things, are we,
yeah,
nonprofit approval by city commission, or do you just want the city commission to approve all the
Yes.
letters of support?
Yes. False letters of support.
That's not what we said though.
I know, but I think that's
That is-
probably right.
Well, so then there's no
Okay, that's the
question.
lawyer in the room right there, that's a good.
So, but it's also, I mean, we get put in this situation with dial-a-ride all the time, where there really isn't an option of not approving a grant
Right,
for something
right.
that's dial-a-ride
Wow,
thing.
that is a very good point.
You know, like, if, we would not be doing our job as public servants if grants like this came to us and they're merely checking a box so you can get government money. Like, we would not be doing our jobs if we started to question those things. So I think, Mayor, that's where your head is, treat everything the same. Trust that, you know, the city government runs itself the way it's supposed to.
I don't think we've steered anybody wrong yet, hopefully.
No, and I'm not saying that you have, it's just more like, there's other precedents for grants that we really don't.
So are we asking to have it come before the commission to approve the grants or no?
Well, I think the two things I've heard on the table are, you could have in the resolution, all the letters of support that currently are handled at the staff level could come to the commission for approval. And that's not, I mean, that's at the early stage, right? So that wouldn't impact, after the grant is awarded, then you've got your letter of support, you're good. Or requiring that certain grants from nonprofits and non-governmental agencies come before the commission for approval before they are solicited or applied for.
I like the first option better.
The letter?
The letter of support, and then it's it, that's that.
I would be comfortable
I'm
with that.
comfortable with that as well.
All the letters of support in the resolution will require that all, all solicitations, acceptances, agreements, for any grants by the Housing Commission, would require a letter of support that would go before the City Commission for approval.
And then you would have not only the letter of support, you would have, Linda, the resolution to go with it, correct?
Yep.
Okay.
Takes Mark off the hot seat on certain.
Well, yeah.
It doesn't sound like they're too hot a seat.
It's not too hot of a.
No.
Usually pretty low. Compared to some others,
Yeah.
like the ones about trash and recycling containers.
4 feet apart?
At the curb for
You have
less.
to measure it 4 feet.
Bags for your
Oh, yeah.
beds. Bags for your beds, Lorraine?
Bags for the mattresses? I had to call and ask you that one.
I'm gonna go with the thing that the elephant in the room. Should the city commission make it a policy that any subsidized housing be handled by the housing commission? Just throw it out there, because that's what we're talking about, to finalize that part.
Well, there's one more bullet point.
Oh,
before
was there
that.
another bullet point?
Yes, there was. So, my question about compensation has to do with other boards, so the DBA. The DBA, or would
They
it
don't
be,
get-
no, it would be.
DDA, they don't get paid.
And the housing commissioners do not get paid either, just so you know, Karen.
Are there any other boards that establish compensation for the director of the board? The library is a city employee.
They don't.
I don't think
so.
no,
Library.
They don't set.
No, I think the short answer to that's no. I
Yeah.
think there's some library law that is a little broader on that topic, but, you know, generally, that's not how any wages are set through the library.
So if that's the case, I wouldn't be inclined to change anything about the way that this board works right now in terms of handling compensation.
Thank you for that, Karen, because HUD already requires us to do a salary study, and we are required to report our executive salaries to HUD to make sure that they're in line with other housing commissions, and we pay a company to do our salary studies, and I said to Mark, if you guys want to start paying for that.
The only reason it came along is because I have had city employees say, and I don't know whether they sneak a look at the checks or what, I have no idea.
Public.
Whatever.
It's public
That the
information.
housing commission employees are paid better than the city
If
employees.
you went on HUD's website, I think you could find like the top 5, so it's public all the way around.
So are the housing commission, 9 people paid, or whatever, 11 paid more than the city?
Or wait, are
No,
you
it depends
saying-
on the position.
Are you saying the housing? Thank you, Carla.
No, he's talking about employees. I can give
I've
you a
been
little,
told by employees of the city that the housing commission employees get paid better than they do, and they're not happy.
okay,
I
let me
don't
give
even know
you,
what they get paid, I never looked into it.
let me give you a little background, all right?
Feel free, old timer.
I'm gonna give it to you too. Back in the day, Mark Sahaki worked with the city to bring the raises of his employees up where they kind of mirrored the city's salary in comparable positions. Okay, that was long time ago. And I'm assuming.
We've had 2 salary studies since then, because HUD started requiring.
Okay, so then I'm not in favor of this. I think they're fine with their own salaries or whatever they do. But that's how it all got started, and I know they were raised and things were done through all of that.
And we do try to keep our personnel policies similar, because my staff came to me and said, oh, the city got Juneteenth off. And I'm like, oh, well, we should probably look at that, so.
And that's been going on for years,
Yeah,
that
we're
kind of
always,
stuff back and forth.
you know.
Linda, what kind of retirement do you have over at the housing?
Mark was the last defined
Benefit?
There are no defined benefits, we're all defined
Converted to
contributions.
DC.
I did, I was given advice, I was given the option. And my financial person said, oh, you should switch, and then everybody else was like, I can't believe you switched.
Well, you should switch, because we're never gonna change the DB plan.
So yes, all of the DBers are retired.
And you're all under MERS, right?
We're all under MERS. Yep,
Helps me.
it does. They just called me up. I told you.
Well, sometimes he struggles a little with getting the right question so he can get the right answer, right? Fairness?
You need to be more like
Dirty look off your face.
more dismissive.
I usually know.
Stir the, here, sign this.
Huh?
Here, sign this.
No, but, I respect the city employees to the hilt. And when they come and whine and say, all those people that the housing commissioner are on defined benefit plans, and we wanted one of those, the policeman wanted, everybody wants defined benefit, right? Everybody in the world does.
Well, everybody had it at one time.
Right.
Right.
So I was told that those folks all have the DB plan, and I thought, oh, that's not fair. They don't.
Well, it would be fair if they were all old timers and they were grandfathered in before
Right.
they were converted.
I wanna say it was like 1997.
Well, we converted police and fire in '98.
Okay.
Non-bargaining came after that. I can't give you the exact date because I don't remember.
Well, I was like 19 years old, and I was
2000.
like, who, I'm probably not gonna be.
You're young, you got
I'll be
plenty of
vested,
time.
I'll be vested in the DB, before the DB.
As far as I know.
Who knew I was gonna be here this long? Recorders.
Now I'll go back to the bullet point passed, I guess, Karen.
That's your bullet.
So we have to follow the bullet points. Mine wasn't a bullet point, so I won't ask it again.
Good, we got our thing.
Now, I'm now done, all my bullet points have been covered.
It's really, this is Brad's,
These are my bullet
That's
points.
right. This is
Brad's session.
He's done a fine job.
I gotta,
So I mean, that's all I have. What I get in terms of feedback is I'll draft a resolution, 1, changing the appointment to the mayor of city commission approval, 2, requiring that the annual audit be submitted with the annual report to the city commission, and 3, that, the letters of support required for all grants applications. The application phase. So all grant application letters of support would go to the city commission for prior approval before. But I'll prepare something to that effect for next meeting for city commission's consideration. That's all I had. If there's other questions, and Mary, you had one issue.
I'm not talking anymore.
What was your question? I forgot already. What was his question?
Ask Linda, maybe she'd remember.
Linda?
I remembered, I just don't wanna ask.
Because you don't wanna answer it? I'll be the one.
I don't wanna ask, no, okay, so the
No.
question is about new subsidized housing development.
Oh, that's right.
Oh, yeah.
Because that caused a lot of angst.
So my answer to your question is that this pilot ordinance that the city has adopted was brought about after Ryan Creek came into the county, and there was a lot of issues there. There were some other issues with some other housing developments, and the city commission at the time said, what should we do We don't want that to happen here. So this pilot ordinance has 6 items in it. And it says right in there, the Big Rapids Housing Commission shall be asked for its input and recommendation on each of the 6 criteria, which will be provided in writing, blah, blah. And of the 6 criteria, one is, will not have a significant negative impact on existing rental housing market. So anybody who's applying for income-based housing, affordable housing, tax credit, is going to ask for a pilot 99.999% of the time. So this was the city commission's, at the time, thought process. So, and going back to Public Act 18, the city created the Housing Commission to do affordable housing. So we have an opinion, and you want our opinion according to this ordinance, because you created us. And because, I don't want to brag, but we do have a good track record on the housing, so.
How about the Housing Commission taking the time of the Housing Commission officials to do a private subdivision? So I'm just laying it on you, today's the day.
Say that again. Are you talking about Brookside? So what's your I'm not sure what your question is. Because
Well, the Housing Commission led that charge once it failed.
yes, and I believe
And
somebody
so
from the
I've heard,
city asked
from
the.
builders and others saying, well, the Housing Commission has all this free help and they have all these people working, and then we can't compete with the Housing Commission on.
What does free help mean? Because that costs a lot of money. And I
The guys out there working
And
in
I
the
believe-
Housing Commission.
And I believe it was correct me if I'm wrong, somebody, maybe Mark knows, I believe that whoever owned that came to the city, and whoever at the city directed them to come talk to the Housing Commission, which is why we took it on, because I guess I thought that was kind of like something the
When
city
was the
wanted us
last
to
time
do.
there was houses built in
Trust me.
Rapids?
This isn't, any of that is my opinion. None of that was my opinion at all.
You need to go to my place for coffee in the morning.
So,
You gotta hear all sides.
yeah, if we're
Yeah,
gonna,
come to my place in the morning for coffee.
if we're gonna talk about the elephant in the room, not Project Elephant, elephant in the room, has to do with the Hanship property and the city's vision for the Hanship property. And I think we need to somehow collaborate with the Housing Commission, because all the offers that we're getting for that property seem to be tied to some sort of housing. When we looked at it years ago of rezoning, I think, didn't we rezone it?
You're right.
Right, I don't remember what we put to our.
It's R3.
R3. So the idea in my mind, since I've been involved, has always been it's going to be a mix of housing and some sort of shop, commercial entity, something like that. So then we come back to 2024, and it would seem that the only proposals we're getting on housing for that are coming in with some sort of request for a pilot or something like that.
It's too bad it couldn't be turned into a hotel.
Well, so
And
then I think the question for the commission is, and for the housing commission is there any use for that property that has a housing component to it, similar to what we rezoned it for? And I'm not saying the proposal we got from the most recent developer that had way too many apartments, that didn't have the right fit for type of housing that we need. Is there something from a housing perspective that could go there that would be something someone would want to come in and build? I think that's the main question here. What's our vision, what's your vision, and is there a happy medium?
community's vision,
And
'cause
that-
we sure heard what they thought about
But
that.
we have gone, I mean, that's the thing,
That's the thing.
we did ask for their opinion, and that's why we rezoned it, and that's why, so it always comes back to the Hanship property right now.
what you said was spot on. I guess my recommendation or my thoughts would be kind of two things there. One, the city's vision for the property itself is R3 what you want it zoned? Is that the type of development you want there? If it's not, then maybe look at rezoning it, and that's not necessarily something you need the housing commission for. If you want it to be commercial, then.
I'm with Carlene, I'd love to see a hotel with a restaurant in there.
But then to the extent you get,
Happen.
to the extent you get, requests for, development proposals from developers for subsidized housing of some nature, maybe the solution is that you would, at that point, any development proposal you get that has a subsidized housing component would then go to the housing commission for their review and consideration and comment. And then they send it back with their comments before you take action on it, which seems to be
Whole thing.
consistent with what the ordinance.
Or even going to the next level of saying, like, in the description for the property, like, these are the types of things that we would be interested in. These are the types of things that we are not interested in. Because we do need housing.
I think the other elephant in the room for that is the question of the environmental. So.
Everybody seems to have
There's a lot of
different opinion.
unknowns.
I don't
A
know
lot of
why
elephants
there's.
in the
Exactly, that's what I mean, there's a lot of, maybe not elephants, but unknowns. And I mean, if we start meeting monthly, maybe we
The laws have
can.
changed so much since the last, when that was all that was moved to the Big Hill. The laws have changed so much. I mean, what we just
The
finished.
environmental laws.
Yeah, the environmental laws. When I think about how much money we spent just in the alleyway between Patterson's and our Nesbit building, I mean, and the laws have changed, so I think we need to be aware of that. The other thing too is, I just have one question for you, because I don't know what's going on, but we're gonna be having a lot of empty buildings in this community, a lot. And we've got some great big holes. And does the city have any plans of having someone go out and do recruiting? Is there a recruiter right now at all?
Well, we pay $20,000 a year to have the right place as our economic development.
So are they're
That's
the
Kelly
ones that you
Wozniak.
guys,
That's everybody's recruiter.
okay.
In Mecosta County, that's our recruiter. So, I mean, Michelle and I do the most of that work.
Big lots.
Penn local.
Okay, yeah.
will come in.
Reminder.
Yeah, no, Mecosta County Development Corporation is the economic development wing of the city of Big Rapids.
That is it, so.
That's who we have.
Do you guys visit with them?
We're on the board.
business?
The mayor and I are both on the board
Oh, yeah,
of
okay.
the MCDC, yeah.
It just, we've got our hands full.
Mark and I have been having conversations about that also.
But then,
And what we can do, what's within the bounds of the city to do to kind of.
I just was, I know this is for another discussion, I just was curious
huge.
about that.
Yeah, we have one coming up downtown, and I'm gonna start making some phone calls myself to some places I would like to see go there, so. Every little bit helps. I think, Karen, you had some questions about what Carlene was saying, just a little background. So when we first renovated the Nisbet and Fairman buildings, we had full phase 1, phase 2 environmental studies done. We spent a ton of money. There was a underground storage tank, there was a whole bunch of stuff. And so we thought this time around that we passed the environmental once, that we had nothing to worry about. Instead, we spent probably more money than we spent the first time, because Patterson's was a dry cleaner 50-some years ago, before I was even born, sorry. No offense
Laws
to people in
changed.
the room that remember it being a dry cleaner. But we spent a ton of money because there was a dry cleaner, and that was a new database that Eagle picked up, and I don't know how old your environmental, phase 1 environmental is, but anybody buying it is gonna need to do a new one, and there is probably more things that are gonna come
Yeah,
up.
'cause
would
how
be
much
my
was
guess.
that? Do you
It's
remember off
almost
the top of your head?
500,000.
Yeah, it was almost 500,000.
Yeah, I don't know that we're gonna solve.
That's what I was gonna say,
We're not gonna solve
unknown.
this here tonight. It was a
what I hate
good
for
discussion.
people to do is just say environmental, and it's on the river, and that doesn't necessarily
This
mean
one-
there are.
So there's a lot of unknowns, which I'm glad that we're gonna be meeting monthly, so we can, do some brainstorming, that kind of stuff, so.
We're adjourned. It was time.
I agree.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Monthly with